Hello again and welcome back to Illegally Cited. This is Jesse and I am back for another channel update slash random topic video. Try to do these at least once a month or so, and I don't think I've done one of these for July yet. I know we had a lot going on with events and game releases in June, but seeing as how, I can't believe it already, but July is over halfway done. I haven't done one of those yet, so I figured, now is an okay time to try to do one of these videos. There's a lot going on. But yeah, it has been a crazy and busy month. Not so much for the channel and games and stuff, but my work has been actually really crazy this month. So might talk a little bit about that in a little bit. But before I go any further, again, just want to thank everybody for supporting the channel, whether you've found the channel ages ago, years ago. I've been doing this for over 10 years now, surprisingly enough. And but if you just found the channel recently, which I know a few people have, thanks for finding the channel, thanks for subscribing, and thanks for everybody's support. If you are new to the channel, I do unlock videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, sometimes more frequently if there's something really cool happening in accessibility, or maybe it's a holiday, or maybe just for whatever reason, you'll get maybe there's a gaming event or something, but I do periodically do some bonus videos and stuff. But Monday, Wednesday, and Saturdays are typically my video unlock days, so you can check those out. Everything is also divided into playlists as well, and I highly recommend people check those out, because that way you can find the type of content that you are looking for. I cover everything from low vision spotlight game videos, which are like games that I play, even yes, I'm legally blind, but I play them with the remaining vision that I have. I cover games PC, iOS, even console, PlayStation, Xbox, accessible game spotlight. Those playlists are games that are playable by people with no usable vision whatsoever. Maybe they're audio games, maybe they're voiceover accessible, maybe they have text-to-speech built in, any number of different things, but that's what those playlists are. I cover virtual reality accessibility, games and experiences, although I've kind of backed off on that recently just because, again, VR platforms have not really added any accessibility features, and so I've kind of gotten disenchanted with some VR stuff lately just because we haven't really seen any accessibility, and I'm kind of done struggling, as we're starting to see more platforms. You've got Xbox and Sony and PC stuff, and we're starting to see games and platforms have accessibility, and so it's kind of becoming harder to consistently just put up with platforms that don't have anything. So there's that. A couple other playlists I want to draw people's attention to are the Growing Up Illegally Cited is a series that I started earlier this year, and I've had a lot of fun with, actually. And I've covered, for now, a lot of the content that I wanted to, but if people have any other ideas, for topics, let me know. But that series is basically two things. It's, there are certain topics that I wanted to delve into a little bit more deeply as it relates to blindness, gaming, accessibility, assistive technology, those types of things. And so I wanted to cover those topics, but I also wanted a centralized place. I get a lot of common questions. I've gotten a lot of common questions over the years. So, like, oh, how did I get into game accessibility? What is your vision like? Just any number of different questions. And so that is the playlist where I also put those types of topic questions in as well, because that way, I've tried to answer them, whether it's in comments or videos like this in the past. But again, I get asked them fairly often, fairly frequently, so I want to put them in a separate place so that, hey, now people have a centralized place. They can look for that kind of information. And I'm really kind of proud of some of the videos. I did some stuff on like some of my technology and gaming history, memories and stuff. Did some stuff on education, employment. I really like those. Just all kinds of stuff, so check that out. And the other one I want to draw your attention to is, I forget the exact wording of it, but it's like interviews, podcasts, and presentations. So I've done presentations on game accessibility, VR accessibility in the past. I've spoke at the Game Accessibility Conference twice now. And I've done podcast appearances and interviews and stuff like that. So that's where you'll find all of that kind of fun stuff. Done a few interviews. You'll also find my interview for Mr. Alan D1 with the Tobii Accessibility Mod. Big shout out to him. Heck yeah. Did that one recently. That was a blast. But yeah, so definitely check out the playlists. There's tons of videos now. Hopefully you'll find something that you like. And, you know, I haven't checked in ages, but I just before starting this video, I looked at my dashboard and I looked and yeah, we actually have 3,750 right on the dot subscribers. So, you know, it's still pretty small in the grand scheme of things, but you know what? It's probably over 3,000 more than I thought I was going to have when I started this thing. So, you know what? We're doing all right. But yeah, thank you to everybody who has been supporting the channel. It's been a pretty busy time for the channel. Like I said, there's been, June especially, we had a lot of different stuff with Diablo. I haven't covered Street Fighter because I haven't bought it yet. But I've got so many games in my backlog. There's some games coming out right around the corner. I know I'm looking forward to, there's a new Double Dragon game coming out. I can't remember the exact name of it, but that's coming out later this month, like within the next week or two. Rise of the Triad, Ludicrous Edition, basically a remastered New Blood, I think it's Night Dive Studios. New Blood and Night Dive, they are doing the Lord's work, remastering all these retro first-person shooters. I mean, what they've done with things like Turok and System Shock and just, you name it, there's tons of these that they've been doing, and now we're getting totally remastered with new levels and content. Rise of the Triad, that's coming out later this month. I was going to do a demo time video for it during Steam Next Fest, but I never got around to it. But yeah, very much looking forward to that because if you, but yeah, I have a whole playlist devoted to retro FPS, retro first-person shooters. That is my jam. I've got a whole Doom playlist, Doomed, anything Doom related, because Doom is my favorite game of all time. So yeah, I love retro shooters. And I've got a couple more that I didn't even hear about until a couple days ago on Twitter, so I'm going to probably check those out. So you're not going to escape the retro shooter. We're going to keep looking at those because I'm really, really loving those. And then we're going to get maybe a little bit of a dry spell in August, which is totally fine because, like I said, I've got a backlog from hell as it is. But then, oh God, September and October, where am I going to find the time? I mean, we've got Starfield, Alan Wake 2, we got 2 Mario games coming out. We've got I really, really, really want RoboCop to be good. Like I said, I can't even remember them all. There's at least like probably 10 to 12, like a dozen games or something that's coming out in those 2 months. I'm like, I have no idea. Especially with a game like Starfield, as friggin' huge as that game is going to be. I don't know when I'm going to find time to play this. I have some vacation time at work that I'm going to have to use within the next year to get my balance under a certain amount. And so, you know, maybe I might just take some time in September and just do some nice gaming, kick back and do some binge gaming, and that'll be fun. But we'll see. So there's a lot to look forward to. Oh, Forza, that's going to be totally blind playable, by the way. We're definitely, absolutely going to be covering that. Forza, we're going to be playing that. So yeah, there's tons of game releases coming out. And we've got Realms Deep, they announced that is happening at the end of September again. So that's a cool thing that's going to be going on. And that's, they don't exclusively do retro shooters, but I mean, that's a huge part of what they do. So hopefully we're going to get some news on some retro shooters we already know about. Hopefully we'll get some new announcements. You never know, you know. I would love for someone just to be like, oh, hey, you know what? We found the rights in copyright hell, and maybe we're going to actually do a remake. Maybe we're going to get a true No One Lives Forever. One can dream. I covered that on the channel a while back, the original version that had been modded. Classic, like PC GoldenEye-esque style game. So yeah, I mean, we've got that coming out. We've got QuakeCon. There's been rumors of a Quake 2 remaster coming out, so it wouldn't really surprise me if we got an announce of that. And that could be something they could just shadow drop and go, oh, by the way, here you go. And it'll just upload. Maybe it'll just, like, when you do an update, like if I own Quake 2 on Steam, maybe it'll just be like, oh, just like they did for Doom, the 1993 edition, just maybe it'll just turn into that, and boom, we'll have all kinds of new content and remastered stuff, and that would be kind of cool to see. And who knows what other things they might announce at QuakeCon. It'd be interesting to see if they do a Quake or anything else with the Doom franchise. Like I said, I know a lot of people love Doom Eternal. I wanted to love it. I wasn't so into the platforming. There were places where I kind of wasn't sure where to go. It was hard to see. And with like the platforming and the kind of the grappling stuff, didn't enjoy that quite as much. And then of course, the whole right around there was when the whole kind of breakup thing happened, and so that kind of really soured my as we were both really looking forward to that game, so that kind of put a stain on the Doom Eternal thing, I guess, just because, like, okay, well, whatever. But really curious to see what's going to happen with QuakeCon. That's usually, I think, in August. That'll be coming. We just had, I think since I did one of these last videos, we had a Nintendo Direct that had a lot of different stuff in it, and there were a few highlights in there. We were getting a Super Mario RPG remaster, which, again, with all the text in it, I'm not sure. I mean, it looked really, like, good visually. I'm not super into turn-based RPGs, but I will admit, like, I played the original Mario and Luigi game, and you have this sort of like active it's turn-based, but you have to still time, like, oh, you hit the button at the right time, you'll do a more powerful jump or a swing of the hammer or whatever. So that's not, kind of like the South Park Stick of Truth. Like when I played that game, it's kind of like that style. I think that's where the South Park game really got their inspiration, is something like Mario RPG and the Mario and Luigi series. So that's coming. And Super Mario Wonder, that just looks like kind of like New Super Mario Brothers if it was on an acid trip. Touch Fuzzy, Get Dizzy, Super Mario World 2, and it was like the pipes are warping and like bending and stretching, and you got Elephant Mario, and just the flowers are talking to you and or singing or something, and it's just like it said, it's like a Mario fever dream, and I'm kind of into it. I kind of want to see what that's going to be. Trying to think what else they had. Pikmin 4. I think that might even be out tomorrow. It's coming out really soon, I think. I want to like Pikmin, but I've never been good at those sort of like strategy, control your minions type of games. I do go okay in the beginning, and then I just get wrecked. So yeah, there's that. Trying to remember what else Nintendo had. I know they had a couple other highlights. I'm like, ooh, that wouldn't be bad. And then they had, what was it? Limited Run Games had a hell of a show a week or two ago, and they announced a lot of, they're bringing back some classic games, and, God, Digital Eclipse, man, these guys, again, like, you look at, like, Night Dive and New Blood and Digital Eclipse, man, these guys, again, they're doing God's work, because the way they did like the Atari 50, they brought the Turtles, Cowabunga collection, just amazing stuff. And now they're diving into what they call like their gold collection, and we don't even know what other games they're going to be doing in the future. But I've covered like the Karateka app. They released like the Apple II version on iOS a few years back. And then they did that, what was like around 2012, 2013, they did this kind of reimagining or whatever. But now, Digital Eclipse they're basically, I think they said there's going to be like 4 different versions. You have like the Apple II, I think they had a Commodore 64 and a couple other versions. But like even you've seen a little bit during the trailer, there's this Karateka, I forget what it's even called, like not remastered. It's on my Steam wish list. but they're taking the Atari 50 collection type of interactive documentary, and they're diving deep into one game. And this one is Karateka. And so you're going to have all those versions, and then they're actually making like an all new kind of like a remastered version that you can play. But then you're going to have like, you know, the timeline, or you're going to have like these different, you know, you'll have text, you'll have screenshots and artwork, you'll have video interviews, you'll have, I think there was like some sort of like podcast thing that they had talked about where they were interviewing somebody, like interviews and stuff. And I love, like, this is how you preserve gaming. You know, we got to talk to these people while they're still around, man. Um, and being a fan of Karateka, like, that was literally the first Apple II game. That is the first visual computer game I ever played, is Karateka. I think I mentioned that in my gaming memories video on the Growing Up Illegally Cited. Yeah, Karateka was the first computer game I ever played, and it was kind of badass. And so I'm very looking forward to that. And then, if I've mentioned him quite a few times throughout the channel. I've even covered like the AVGN games, but the Angry Video Game Nerd, I remember one of his videos that he had done was for a game called Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. It was on the 3DO, and it is just this mess of a game, like borderline softcore porn, like not a dating sim, but like I don't even know I mean, it was kind of like they wanted it to be, you know, all those 90s games where you had like the CD FMV games. It was kind of that, but it wasn't, because the first cutscene was actually a video of the girl, but then everything else was just these weird screenshots with filters on them. And just watch that. Just go look up Plumbers Don't Wear Ties AVGN or Angry Video Game Nerd. It's freaking hilarious. But I knew that they were working on, at some point, they were going to bring it back. But yeah, Limited Run Games, they're bringing it to, that's in September too, I think. But they're kind of doing what Digital Eclipse is doing for Karateka. They're bringing it back, they're remastering it, but then they're adding, like, they were showing like interviews with the cast, and like, I'm genuinely curious about, like, the game itself, sure, whatever, but I want to get the game just because I want to know how this creative mess of a game even got released. I mean, like I said, if you have any familiarity with the game, you'll understand why I'm very curious about the background, because it's like, yeah, what if we just made this weird fever dream of a game, and it's like, it seemed really budget but cutting edge at the time, because, you know, of course you had the videos and pictures and stuff, but it's just a really weird, almost like a college, like the AVGN said, he's like, I could understand if this was some kind of college experiment in a gaming degree program or something, but no, this was like some full release that was just bizarre. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. I got to admit, it is just bizarre as hell. So yeah, and they were just, there was a few other ones I can't even remember, but they were just, you know, they're doing some physical releases. Oh, they're bringing back Gex. They're doing the Gex trilogy, Gex 1, 2, and 3, which I remember playing the PC demo of the first game. I never, because that was another, I think that was a 3DO series, and then it went to, I think it eventually went to PlayStation, maybe Saturn, I don't remember. But I remember in college, that was one of the demos, when I got a T1 line in the college, I remember downloading that demo for Gex, and it was like, whoa, this like weird cartoon character thing, you know, it's got talking while you're playing. It's not just in a cutscene, because there's like this Dana Gould, you know, gecko thing. And so yeah, I'm kind of curious. I kind of want to check that out again. It's kind of like your B tier platformer back in the day, because everyone was making their own mascot platformer. Um, so yeah, that's coming out. That's going to be coming to physical and I believe Steam and stuff like that. So yeah, they're starting to bring back a lot of interesting stuff, and limited run games seems to be doing kind of a neat thing too. So they said I think they're going to have another presentation here shortly, and so maybe we'll even get some more surprise announcements. Who knows? But I'm all for it. Bring it on. Got to preserve this stuff and make it playable on modern platforms. Especially, I love that we're getting some of the, everyone is, we've got our Super Nintendo, Nintendo, Sega Genesis. We've got those types of things. PlayStation to some degree. But like, I want to get more like TurboGrafx 16, CDI, 3DO. Oh, speaking of CDI, remember recently I did that video for CDI Zelda, and I streamed it like last year sometime, I think it was. That was an adventure. They are doing because they can't use Zelda, of course, because Nintendo owns it, but they're doing a spiritual successor in that same style where you have like the overly exaggerated caricatures and the 2D gameplay. They're doing a spiritual successor to that type of Zelda 3DO Zelda game or CDI Zelda game, and it's coming later this year. I am so down to see what that's going to be like. And they said they were just trying to be like, oh, and it's actually going to play well this time. So we'll see. But count me genuinely curious about that. I have to see what that's going to be. I did not have any of those things on my bingo card this year. Bringing back Gex, Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, Karateka, frickin' just all this retro stuff, like the CDI Zelda spiritual successor. I did not see that coming. And honestly, that was one of the most surprising and exciting gaming presentations this summer, because yeah, it was fun to see what Microsoft and Sony and that were going to do, even Nintendo, but like these were genuine surprises. You kind of know what your AAA is going to do. It's like, it's going to be a sequel to this, it's going to be a sequel to that. We'll get maybe we'll get a couple remasters, or we'll get whatever. There'll be a couple new things, but no, this was generally really kind of fun. Speaking of fun, and I should have mentioned it earlier when I was talking about Doom and Quake, just earlier this week, Sir John Romero of id fame, Commander Keen, Doom, Quake, and of course Daikatana, which I really should look at again one of these days to show you guys. He wrote a book. It's called Doom Guy, Life in First Person. And even though I was super busy this week with work, I found a way to binge it in like 2 days, and it was really, really good. I've said before, I highly recommend Masters of Doom. And if you get the Audible version, it's narrated by Will Wheaton, which is actually really good. But the Audible version of Doom Guy is narrated by John Romero himself, and he did an excellent job. I finished it last night, and it was really good. It went from anything... He talked a lot about his childhood, and boy, he had an interesting childhood, kind of a rough time growing up in a lot of ways. But it wasn't just about, but it had a lot of his days at id, going through Commander Keen and even his earlier games. I mean, what did he say? By the time he made Doom, he made like, I can't even remember what it was. It was like some obscenely high number of games already, like little games. By the time he did like soft disk and then went to id. But then he goes through like, and it wasn't just like, oh, we did this, we did that, yeah, Doom, Quake, whatever. But he would go into detail and like, oh, this is how this worked, and this is why we chose to do it this way, and we had this person working on this, and I did that, and kind of cleared up a few things that were maybe a little bit maybe a little bit off in Masters of Doom and gave a little bit more background. I mean, it was really interesting. And then he did a pretty big chapter or big section on his life after id, because he left. He got kind of booted out of id in, what was it, like 96, 7? Right after Quake had come out, because he finished Quake off. And then he was gonna leave, and then the team just like, yeah, we want your resignation. And so then he started a bunch of other stuff, and he's started a lot of other companies. There was some, like, he was going to do some educational games. It actually sounded kind of neat the way he was trying, because it was like, I don't want to make the typical education game where kids know it's educational. I want to make it fun first, but then, like, oh, they're playing the game and they don't even realize what they're learning. And then about another game that came out, he talked about Sigil. Of course, he talked about his founding and the downfall of Ion Storm. They touched on that in the Masters of Doom book, but it was really cool having his perspective, since he was the one that really started that, him and Tom Hall. And even then, and then he's doing his mobile. He did some mobile stuff for a while, and then he came back and he, like I said, the last few years he's done Sigil. There's another Sigil 2 coming out at probably by the end of next year. And he's got a new first-person shooter in the works. It's not necessarily going to be a retro game, but it's going to be a modern game that is more like, it has retro like feel to it, but it's actually a modern first-person shooter. But it was just a really good, really informative, really fun book to listen to, because it was, like I said, it had a lot of the gaming stuff in there, but he had a lot of his personal experiences. His personal life, talked about his dad a lot, his mom and dad, his grandpa and grandma. The way he's lived all kinds of different places. It was just a really, really good book. If you're at all into gaming, if you're all into gaming history, you love id, you love Doom, you love any of their stuff, John Romero, John Carmack, any of those guys, I have to recommend Doom Guy, Life in First Person. You can get it like in digital, of course. You can get it, of course, Audible. Like I said, it's narrated by the man himself. He did a great job. One of my favorite. Again, I love that we're getting books like this. But yes, I highly recommend Doom Guy, Life in First Person. That is my official review. And yeah, I mean, then another thing, first-person shooter related, we are getting. You can still pre-order it, but till the end of this month, just look up First-Person Shooter Documentary. It is a 4-hour plus documentary. Like, they've done other documentaries in the past, like, what is it called? I just went stupid. They have 2 of them. In Search of Darkness and In Search of the Future. There's a sci-fi one, like 80s sci-fi. They're really, really good. Just covering like 80s horror movies, 80s sci-fi. And this time they have like David Craddock, who's written game books on like Diablo and like Rocket Jump. He wrote that on Quake. He's written a lot of game books. And they did this 4.5-hour documentary. I backed it on Kickstarter. It's just called FPS. I couldn't talk about it back then, but about a little while ago, as part of the Kickstarter crew, and I got selected, and I got to watch a almost final version. It's not final, but it was like very close. All the content was there. They just wanted to tweak and add a few things for the final, but like I already watched it, and because they wanted feedback and suggestions for any final, tweaks and additions they could do. And I watched it, and like I said, they did omit some things. Come on, it's a 4.5-hour documentary. How do you go through an entire history? They could easily do a part 2 of this and dive into more stories, cover some games they didn't. Like, they really didn't touch on some of the BioShock stuff or like System Shock all that much, if at all. Like I said, there are some games that they did miss. but they did a really, really great job overall, and it was kind of a nice history of the first-person shooter that is a little more heavily weighted toward the 90s and early 2000s, because I think that's what people have um, the most nostalgia for. You know, again, your Wolfensteins, your Quakes, your Dooms, Duke Nukem, but I mean, going deeper than that as well. But I mean, you know, they kind of, one thing I also say, they kind of glazed over like some, like the really the modern shooters, especially like your military, Call of Duty, Battlefield, um, those types of games. They touched on them, but by the time they got to those, it was like, well, we're so far in already. It's been such a long video. You know, maybe they could expand on that in a future FPS documentary if they did one. But like, I know some people, especially people who play a lot of Call of Duty and things like that, they might be a little bit disappointed. But overall, like I said, it's really, really good, and it just makes me want to go back and play all these games over again. Um, so you can still buy, you can get a digital copy, you can get a physical copy, but they're only, you know, these are kind of limited run type of deals. They only do so many of them. So if you are interested in first-person shooters in general, especially retro first-person shooters, I mean, there's things I learned from there, from both the Doom Guy book and the FPS documentary, that I didn't know, and it was fun reading and watching about some of these things. So, yeah, FPS the documentary. I think they're gonna have. I think the digital version's coming in August, and then the physical version is coming later this year. So yeah, very, very much looking forward to that. So yeah, we're eating good this year. A lot of first person shoot. I mean, 2023, man. And it was funny because I remember on Twitter recently, I remember seeing a few people retweeting and commenting on some guy was like, "Oh, right now this is the worst time to be a gaming. There's no innovation. It's just a horrible time for gaming." I'm like, "Are you crazy?" And people are like, "Yeah, if you only sit and play Call of Duty and Fortnite." And I'm like, "Yeah, if that's all you play and you just play these shitty live service games that just eat your money, with battle passes and microtransactions and whatever, I mean, yeah, then sure. But like, just venture away from these live service games, even venture away from AAA. You, it couldn't be a better time. You've got retro remakes, you've got spiritual successors, you've got totally new and innovative franchises and games and series, and you know, any genre you want. You want an RPG? Do you want a point and click? Do you want a retro first person shooter? Do you want a beat 'em up? Do you want, I mean, what? Take your pick, man. This year is going to be insane. If I end up being a judge for the accessibility awards this year again, or on the voting jury for the game awards this year, it's going to be really tough because I want to give attention to so many different games, and they only really they'll have the nominees, but you know, you can only pick one, and it's going to be hard because, you know, I have a feeling like Forza is going to be insane. If you get a big AAA racing game that a blind person can play, it's going to be hard not to nominate that. But then you have like Diablo, and that's another thing that I want to talk about shortly. But you have that. I mean, even though yes, it could have been even a little better for blind players, but like Hogwarts Legacy this year, I mean, those are a couple AAA games that were really good. But the problem is I don't want to shortchange these indie developers either, like Brock the Investigator, excellent game. Um, like I said, there's just been so many that I don't want to snub anybody. And like even just like mainstream games like that I play with my Vision. Christ, it's been like half a year, and it's already going to be hard to choose. And we have some of the biggest games coming out yet later this year. It's ridiculous. So whoever thinks that we're in a dull point of gaming right now is smoking crack, because I don't know, man. I think we're doing pretty good this year. Yeah, there's been a few disappointments. There's been a few duds. Uh, Couple first-person shooters that I thought were gonna be good, but really didn't end up liking. I can't even. I always forget the name of them too. Uh, uh, can't even remember. They're in my list for the end of the year stuff though, so I'll be talking about them at the end of the year. But yeah, there's been a couple disappointments, but overall, it's been a huge year for gaming, and it's only getting better. I do want to talk a little bit about a recent Diablo thingy, though. So in the last few days, there's been a Diablo patch, and they have their season one pass out now, where you can like I think you have to beat the game, and then you have to create a new character, and then you can play through the season content or whatever. I've been so busy, I've wanted to get back into Diablo, but I'm still in chapter 2 somewhere, and I need to get back in with my barbarian and start slashing things again. But um, there was a recent update, and it improved accessibility in some ways. They didn't really super clearly detail what those accessibility features were, but I think then people figured it out and posted some stuff on Twitter that I retweeted, I think yesterday, as I'm recording this. But also, a lot of people are not happy with this update for a few reasons. So, mainstream, just overall wise, it sounds like they've kind of made some adjustments to all the classes and kind of nerfed some of the abilities and stats and special abilities for a lot of the classes, and people are not really happy about that. So, I really hope when I go back in with my barbarian, I hope he's not. I hope he's not nerfed too much, and it's not too bad. But then there's an excessive, like I said, there is some text-to-speech improvements, I guess. But it also kind of created somewhat of a major problem for some people. I have not had a chance to play it myself yet, and I might wait a little bit until I hear when they're going to do another update. So I did watch a video of somebody demonstrating it, and I retweeted that on Twitter. Basically, what's happening is, there's a line between speaking enough and being too verbose, and we're gonna get into not speaking enough when I talk very briefly about a game that I just tried tonight in a minute. But Diablo, now there's a thing where, like, if you are alone or if you're in a party, basically, if you're trying to read anything else, like your menu or your inventory or any other UI, you can't really hear it, or it overlaps because you have all the sound effects and stuff too. But basically, what happens is like when you use your mana or your special ability power, as that recharges, it's constantly reading out that number until it fully replenishes. So you're hearing this constant announcement of the values changing, and it overpowers everything else that you hear via text to speech. So if you need to like pause and go into your inventory or use your UI, it won't, like, the text to speech just keeps reading these announcements until those values have hit 100% so they can stop talking. And think about that, if you're in a group and it's reading stuff for you in your party, oh God, that would get really, really obnoxious. So, I appreciate, and they already said that they're looking into it. They realize, whoops, that is a problem. They've been starting to communicate a little bit about it. I've seen a few tweets about it online, which is good, but at the same time, like, you gotta wonder how many, like, does Blizzard have, and this is not, I'm just not gonna pick on Blizzard here, but any game company, if you are gonna have accessibility features in your games, do you have people in your development team that are not just developing the features, but like Do you have a do you have someone with a vision impairment? Do you have someone, with a cognitive impairment or hearing impairment or whatever it happens to be? Do you have those sorts of diverse skill sets in your dev team? B, do you have those same types of people in even if it's a closed, like a closed beta or a closed testing outside of the development team themselves? Like sometimes they'll get, really key players from the community or something, the fan community. Do you have those types of players, testers, QA, anything in between? Do you have those types of people? Because again, if I don't have a disability and I'm like, oh, I think this would be a really good idea. Look at how it reads the constant numbers, the values as my mana replenishes or whatever. Oh, that's really good. They're going to appreciate that because then they'll know exactly how much they have. But they're taking that as they can just, if they don't want to listen to that, they can just look at the game visually and look at whatever else it is they want to look at. But if you're a blind player and you have to sit through that, that's your only means of, getting that information. No, that is not by far, that is not the ideal implementation, probably, of how that should be implemented. Or at the very least, you should have the option to say, do you want to have these constant announcements? Maybe have a thing to say, do I want to turn that on or off? Or I want to have a frequency slider. Do I want to hear about it like every 30 seconds, every 15 seconds, every minute, whatever it is. Those types of things, like those are things you have to consider. And if you are developing, let's say, these accessibility features from a perspective of, I'm fully abled and I don't necessarily need these features, but I'm developing for, that's how you make these kind of mistakes. If you don't have somebody that actually relies on these features as the way they play the game, that's where you run into these things. So you need, that diverse development team. You need diverse QA. You need external testers if you're using those. You need to include those so that you don't, because again, a lot of people have said, well, this is actually a regression from the way that text-to-speech accessibility was in Diablo 4 up to this point. So, yeah, that happened. And, just thinking about, like, seeing that video even, that's why I haven't fired it up. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I will wait, because I think I would find that obnoxious. And to me, like, if I were going to suggest something, as I said, I would say, give me the option, if you want to have that, give me an option to toggle that on and off. And maybe let me set a slider for the frequency that type of announcement is announced. I don't want it every 2-3 seconds. Maybe I only want it every 15 to 30 seconds. The other thing that I would actually recommend is you don't have to filter everything through text to speech. Audio cues and sound effects. Again, look at The Last of Us and The Last of Us 2. You don't have the text-to-speech announcing every little thing. I'm getting attacked and there's somebody's coming at me with a melee attack. I hear a cue that says, oh, I better block. Okay. Okay, I'm nearing an edge. Here's your ledge detection sound. Or, oh, I got to crouch under this thing or jump over this windowsill or this object. You don't have a text-to-speech saying, jump here, or press A to jump, or whatever. You just hear that sound, and if you have a sound glossary, you go through and learn what those sounds are. Maybe you have a sound effect for it to represent like like your mana or health level. You would pitch 2 different sound effects. Oh, your health, instead of saying like, oh, your health is at 75%, your health is at 50%. Your mana is at 25%. Maybe you have these 2 different sound effects, one for health, one for mana. And then, when you hit those different presets, like 75%, 50% or whatever, you hear this kind of a sound effect to say, oh, hey, this is good. like even right now when I was playing before, you had I believe if I remember correctly, you had a sound when your specials were coming back. So it's like, oh, I used this special and it's got a 30-second or it's got a minute cooldown. Oh, now I can use that special again. Having that sound to say, oh, yeah, okay, your B button special is available, or your Y button or your X button special is now available. You don't necessarily need text-to-speech for that. You can just do a quick audio cue that, as long as it is clear enough and doesn't get always overpowered by other gameplay music and effects, that can be a more efficient and elegant way to convey that, so you don't always have something yammering in your ear. Sometimes you do want specific voice information. I want to know something very specific, and I want that spoken to me. But again, that's where if you speak to players, maybe some people want something spoken, so you have those types of options as I described earlier, and some people just want short audio cues. But again, if you're designing for somebody and not with somebody in mind, that's where you make these types of mistakes. So I did want to kind of use that as just an update on, that's what's happening in Diablo, and maybe, maybe a little bit of a cautionary thing to say, well, if you're playing Diablo, or if you haven't played Diablo yet, you might, like I said, I know they're continuing to work, and I know they're looking, hopefully they're thinking about adding some kind of a audio cue navigation assist thing later on, but clearly they are supporting the game much more than they did Diablo 2. I remember them saying, oh, we're going to have text-to-speech, we're going to have this, that, and the other thing, and I don't think that ever turned out, but they are actively working on Diablo 4, which is good. But as of now, like I said, you can totally try it, and if it doesn't bother you, cool, but just know that there's kind of a little bit of a regression and some stuff that happened with the text-to-speech after the recent update. So there's that. And I also mentioned when we were talking about Diablo, I just tried, they had a free play weekend for Need for Speed Unbound. That game came out, I think, late last year. And I was sort of curious about it. But again, all these driving games are open world now. Even Burnout, like when they had Burnout Paradise. But like everything is, you don't even have fixed, you don't have just arcade fixed circuit, closed circuit tracks anymore. Everything's got to be open world now. And I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to see it. Like, do they have in-world navigation? Even if it was visual, how easy is it to see? So I downloaded the game on Steam to try to play it a little bit, and I already uninstalled it because I'm just like, I don't have the patience for it. I was going to do a video, but I'm like, nah, I'll just talk about it in this update video. So from what I could tell, so here's the thing. I started the game and I was cautiously excited because after we got through all the weird EA Play crap that you had to go through, one of the first things that I heard when the game started is, oh, press enter to enable menu narration. Oh, cool. Okay. Hit enter. And then there was all these like disclaimers or other screens that would come up, and it wouldn't read you. And this was it was just a human, like you could tell it was just a guy that was, they had pre-recorded voice prompts, and it was like press A to continue or press enter to continue, because I was using my controller. But that's all he would say is you didn't know why you were pressing A to continue, but visually I would see, on the right side of the screen there was like this, I don't know, some kind of disclaimer, and then there's some other type of text dialogue or something, but it didn't tell you what this screen was. They didn't even read you the title of what it was. It was just like, no, you don't need to know this information. Just hit A, hit A, hit A again. And it was literally like 4 or 5 different, you had to hit A a bunch of times. And then it got to the menu, and it was like, oh, press A for this, or press the menu button for options and accessibility. I'm like, okay, let's do that. So I hit the menu button on my controller, and it just said press A for accessibility because that was the first thing you landed on. I'm like, okay, that's good. But when I went into accessibility, any guesses to what happened? I arrowed around with my D-pad and it read absolutely nothing. Because again, you know, I have thoughts, I have feelings. um, so, think about like Mortal Kombat 11. They had the menu narration and they narrated, a decent number of the main menus. Like you could go to the towers and the arcade and the story and whatever. But you couldn't go to the move list, you couldn't go to the settings, you couldn't go to the training. Any of that stuff wouldn't read because it was just all, pre-recorded speech by the announcer. This was a way worse version of that because you basically had all he again it was just he would just basically tell you what to press, but you didn't know what you were pressing that for. So when you went into the options, it just didn't read anything. I could arrow, blah 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 blah, nothing. And when it was weird, so when you go back to the main settings menu, as long as the accessibility menu is highlighted, you get the voice prompt to say press A to go into accessibility. But if you arrow down to like graphics or audio or controls, none of those spoke. It just said, no, okay, no, the only option you get to go to is accessibility settings. And even then, we're not going to read any of them. So then I looked into the accessibility settings just to make sure there wasn't anything additional as far as narration. No, not really. And so then I went into the main menu, and it was weird because the first option, it was a horizontal menu, and story mode, when you arrowed to it, it didn't say anything. When you arrowed to multiplayer, it said press A for multiplayer and blah, 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 lobby or something. And then you arrowed to any other option and it wouldn't speak. So it's like they're almost choosing like, well, the only modes that blind people are going to be able to play are maybe these. And so they just said press, but then, so then I went into story mode because I'm like, I just want to see the single player. And it brought you to this character creator. And it was weird because all it would do, I spent like 5 minutes going in and out of I was trying to get through the character creator menu. It was like, choose your avatar, and like they had some preset like male and female avatars, and you would arrow through them, but it wouldn't say anything. You would hit A on one of them, and then it would be like, it wouldn't read any of the prompts. It would just say, press A to continue, or press right, then A. Well, why am I pressing right? And when I looked at it visually, it was like, oh, the first option was like back or something, and the second one was confirm or what. I don't remember what, apply or whatever. But it was dumb. It like they didn't read any of the questions or the prompts, and they didn't read what the actual buttons were. They're just like, yeah, press this, press that. Like, it was bizarre. It's like it didn't say even like press A for OK, or when I hit right arrow, press A to cancel or B to cancel. It was just the weirdest, like, I don't even want to say bare bones, because it's bare bones, but it's like kind of worse than bare bones, because at least if it were bare bones and it read the things that it read, like if it read, press A to, you arrowed to something and said, oh, press A to apply, and then I arrowed over and said, okay, press A or A to cancel or go back. Or if I was in settings and it would just, if it would read the menus, but it didn't go a certain, only went so deep. But this, it wasn't even telling you the prompts or the options. It was just like, kind of like a sighted player. Okay, press right twice. Okay, press A. And you didn't know what you were pressing A right for. You didn't know why or what you were arrowing through. And when you press A, you didn't know why you were supposed to do that. It was just freaking weird. And so, like, okay, I appreciate, okay, EA is looking at accessibility. I mean, like I said, Harry Potter, that was an EA thing, I think, wasn't it? Published by EA, and that was pretty well done. Yes, I wish they had navigation assist for blind players, but like their menu and their inventory, their quests, all that was actually really well done. But boy, this Need for Speed Unbound, man, this was a freaking. I got really excited right away, and then I got another screen or two into it, and it's just like, wow, wait, what are you doing? I would rather almost have no menu narration if you're going to do it that poorly, because you weren't getting any valuable information, and what was narrated was so little, and what was narrated wasn't even the whole picture. Like, again, why am I when it said press enter to enable menu narration? Why am I hitting A 5 different times? What am I skipping? Am I confirming a EULA agreement? Am I going past brightness settings? Am I going past like a general welcome dial? I mean, what am I, why am I just continuing to hit A? Like, visually you get to see it. It's an enigma, man. I don't know what they were thinking. And I would not, in its current state, I would absolutely not brag that I had menu narration, because it is a minimal, confusing mess at best. I probably should have done a video just showing that, but like I said, once I had things set up, I probably couldn't go back, and so it's like, well, I wouldn't be able to show you that anyway. But like I said, they have a free weekend. If you download it on Steam, you can behold this bizarre, really bad attempt at menu narration. I'm sorry, but it's bad. Yeah, it's something, but I had to bring that up, because I'm like, I'm not going to dedicate my time. I'm not going to record a video for this. Because the game was like 70% off, it's like, oh, if I played it on the weekend and I liked it, I could buy it. But I'm like, in addition to that, like when you were in the open world, I couldn't see any in-world navigation. It looked like you had to look at the mini map. Like when you was in a race, there were little checkpoint bubble things, but that was fine. But again, this open world navigation, I need in-world. I can't look down at a mini map. It's too hard to see for me. So I'm just like, no, I'm just not even going to bother buying it. So those are a couple of accessibility topics I wanted to touch on. I should mention I am testing iOS 17 on an older phone. I'm not I mean, well, there's a public beta, so anyone can pretty much go out and try it. Overall, I'm using my old XS Max, and it seems to be working pretty well, actually, overall. But I had one very strange and very worrisome bug. And now that things have hopefully calmed down a little bit, I'm hoping that either tomorrow or next week, I'm going to be able to play with it for a longer period of time more. But the bug that I had was this weird, I use the Alex voice, as you hear in a lot of my videos. And when I installed the dev beta of iOS 17, it was this weird thing where I had Alex selected, and it was selected, but as I would be I would be reading, and then just randomly, and my coworker heard it. I was on the phone with him because he's testing it too, and he didn't have the problem. But I would literally either touch an icon on the home screen, or I would flick left and right to something in an app. And 1 minute, one time it would be Alex, but then it would just randomly switch back and forth between Alex and Samantha. And then it would judder a little bit, and it would lag, and it would just go back and forth. And it was the damnedest thing. I don't know why. We were joking. It was like it had this weird like schizophrenic multiple personality thing where it's like, oh, this time I'm going to be Alex. Okay, this time I'm going to be Samantha, and it was obnoxious because it wasn't responsive either. And so I did a settings reset. I didn't reset the device, but I totally reset the settings, and that seemed to really help. But then I was trying to get the Alex voice back, and it wasn't coming back. Tried to delete it, wouldn't delete, but then eventually it must have figured itself out. Maybe it was just doing some background updates or something or whatever. But eventually the Alex voice came back, and then it seemed to work pretty well. I did have it switch from Alex to Samantha like once or twice, but it was very, very infrequent. Like right now, even in iOS 16, I turn VoiceOver on and off a lot because sometimes I use the magnifier app. Sometimes I play a visual game, and so I don't want VoiceOver on all the time. But a lot of times now, even in iOS 16, when I turn VoiceOver on by triple clicking the side button, it starts out as Samantha sometimes. Like sometimes it'll come up with Alex, but sometimes it'll start as Samantha. And if it does, I gotta wait 10, 15 seconds, and then it'll respond again, and then Alex will come back. But that seemed to almost be like a worse version of that problem. But then when I reset the settings, it seemed to iron itself out. So what I need to do is next week I need to devote more time and use that old phone more extensively and just see if that weird Alex bug has largely gone away now that I reset the settings on that phone. I did already report it to Apple Feedback though, so they do know about it. So I absolutely did report that because boy howdy, it was obnoxious. There was one other thing. God, what was it? I had it in my head a second ago. There was one other accessibility thing I wanted to quickly touch on. iOS 17. Well, I know we had the NFB and ACB events earlier this month. There wasn't much that I heard that was interesting coming out of those. I mean, I know there was a lot of talk about that graphical tablet thingy that's coming out by the end of, I think, next year sometime. But there wasn't really anything that caught my attention. I already talked about the voice stream switching over to a subscription. You know, Winston turned it over to this other company, which I get. I appreciate that. You know, it's not just going to be reliant on him and him only to update the app. Like, what if something happened to him? That's a great thing, but I just hope they don't ruin it. I hope they keep it up and keep it going well, because I absolutely love Voice Stream Reader. Winston is still doing Writer and Voice Stream Scanner, although it's, what is it, VG or V, yeah, or V, was it VR? No, VD Scan and then VR or VD Write or something like that. No, there was something else. Recent accessibility, and I had it in my head as I was talking about the iOS stuff. What the heck was it? There was one other thing I wanted to mention, and it had to do with accessibility. Give me a minute, let me think. iOS, there's nothing in Windows really that I want to talk about. Mac apps, nothing that we haven't talked about already. And I know the minute I stop recording, I'm like, that's what it was. I know I'm going to remember it. I'm like, dang it, I really wanted to talk about that too. And I had it in my head. I had it in my head like 2 minutes ago. Shoot. It was something accessibility related. Might have been something with iOS too, but I don't know, it's gone. I'm trying as hard as I can, but I can't think of what it was. So I guess you'll never know, and maybe neither will I. But yeah, so there are some things coming out. Again, we're getting iOS 17 later this year, Watch OS, all the usual stuff. We'll see what happens with all that. There's a public beta out now, so people can just try it. Again, you probably don't want to do that on your main device in case something goes really screwy. If you have a backup device or an older device or something, throw it on there. And the nice thing is, like the public beta, you don't even have to do the whole profile and weird login thing anymore. You really just go to settings and software updates, and you can choose to enable the public beta right there. But again, I just caution people not to. Oh, I remember what it was. I got it back. Okay, so I'm going to talk about that right now before I forget again. So you remember, yes, this is another iOS thing in a way. So, I've covered how to read Kindle books. And of course, Kindle can read, or VoiceOver can read Kindle books. And so can TalkBack for that matter. I don't want to leave the Android folks out of here. TalkBack and VoiceOver can read Kindle books in the Kindle app. And of course, you have the stupid problem of, textbook publishers especially blocking text-to-speech for some of their books. And there's nothing we can do about that. But one of my sort of, not necessarily complaints, but minor annoyances with VoiceOver reading Kindle books is that, especially when I'm listening to Bard or Audible or Voice Dream or whatever, I like that those are like a separate audio. So if I want to, I can quick check a notification or a quick email, or I can turn VoiceOver off and play a visual game, turn the sound off and still listen to my book and just play something like Threes or something like that. But if you're using VoiceOver, you have to have focus in that app, and if you touch the screen or whatever, VoiceOver just stops reading. And I started a series on Audible, but they only had the first 2 books, and I kind of got hooked on them, so I found them on Kindle and grabbed the Kindle versions for now. And I've been reading the hell out of them for the last week or so. And the series is, if anyone's curious, by the way, it's kind of stupid, but it's really over the top, dumb action, and I get a kick out of it. The series is called Adrian Hell. I think it was part of either a daily deal or I think it was a Audible sale title. I'm like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. That sounds kind of fun. And so yeah, it's the Adrian Hell series. But so I was reading these Kindle books, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and I'm like, yeah, I just wish I could do other things on my phone. He's like, well, what you do is even if you don't have an Amazon smart speaker, you know who I'm talking about, the A lady, Alexa. If you have one of those, or if you just download that app, just log into your Amazon account, and you can read Kindle books with her voice. And she's actually not bad. There is a little bit of a jank to it, because I will say that app is not necessarily organized the most effectively as it could be. And it is not, like, if you pause the book and then you come back to it later, I find that sometimes it just pops you back to the home screen or to the main page. It doesn't, just bring you back to where you were. But then if under your recent skills or recent task, it'll be like, continue reading whatever book you were reading. And you do that, and then you just say this device, and then boom, you're back in reading again. But so there's some jank to it, and sometimes there's been a few times where I'll reopen the app after I've gone away from it for a while, and it'll just it'll come up to like a blank screen and it doesn't do anything. I just close the app and reopen it again. So there's some jank to it. I might even try to do a video on this really quick at some point in the near future. But what's cool about it is if you have her read these Kindle books, then they are treated like audio, because you're not having VoiceOver read it. You can play pause, And then you can lock your phone, or you can leave the app and you can do other things. So if I'm low vision and I want to play a visual game, or if I want to quick jump out and do a notification, it'll just keep on reading like it would a podcast or a music file or whatever. So yeah, I mean, my friend was like, yeah, just use that app and then you can have her read it to you. I'm like, you know what? I don't know why I never thought of that, but that's so simple. It just might work. And I've been doing that, and I've been plowing through 4 or 5 books already the last week or two. So I might just do a video on that for people, because I think that might be helpful for some. So anyway, I think that's about all. This is going to be another heck of a long video, but there ended up being a lot more than I thought again that was worth talking about, and I wanted to spend some time on those accessibility things. Diablo and that weird Need for Speed Unbound, that was just, wow, that was weird. That was bizarre and bad. But like I said, there's going to be a lot more coming. I know I did some streaming in June. I don't know. I might stream. It's been so busy at work that I've just wanted to kick back and read and play drums and just exercise more. And so, like, I haven't even played as many games the last few weeks, and so let alone streaming. I don't know. Maybe I will, especially as some of these other games come out. Yeah, maybe I'll fire up a game. Maybe I'll stream some Double Dragon or some, whatever it is that I feel like playing. Maybe I will. But, again, I'm not coming back regularly, at least for now, for streaming. I might do it occasionally, but it's not high on my priority list for people who are wondering right now. It is fun, but I just got so much other stuff to do. Like I said, and sometimes I just want to play a game and enjoy it, not have to record a video, not have to stream or talk about it. But yeah, so that is what we got going on, and there will be lots of new games coming out, lots of new video. Oh, Mortal Kombat. Yeah, how did I forget? Mortal Kombat 1, of course that's in September. That's another one of the, yes. Okay, that'll be a good one that we have to look at. So yeah, there's tons of stuff. Stay tuned to the channel. We're not going to be slowing down. Follow me on Twitter at BGFH79. I am still there. I'm not going anywhere. I have really no desire to join the Facebook thing that came out a couple weeks ago. I heard it's mixed accessibility at best right now. And again, I canceled my Facebook account a couple years ago and really regret nothing. And I don't know if I really want to get back into it again. So, yeah, follow me on Twitter at BGFH79. I'm not going anywhere. Like the video if you did. You can follow me on twitch.tv/illegally cited when I do stream. You'll get announcements there, but I also announce it on Twitter. And you can follow me right here on YouTube. So thanks again, everybody. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. And until next time, I will chat with everybody again later.